Some roads never forget. They carry what we leave behind. The cries, the promises, the quiet that follows when everything breaks. Emily Carter drove the old red pickup down Highway 31, cutting through the Tennessee backroads with the radio off and her heart nearly empty. The seat was torn, the windshield cracked, dust living in every corner of the dashboard. Taped beside the gauge cluster was a small, worn photo, a blond boy with a crooked smile, holding a cardboard sign scrawled in uneven letters. Never stop being kind. It was the last thing her son had ever written. The sun sank low over the fields, turning the sky to rust and amber. Emily kept her eyes on the road, but the mirror betrayed her. The puffiness around her eyes, the dark circles, the quiet defeat of someone who hadn't believed in tomorrow for a long time. She had been an ER nurse in Nashville for 12 years. 12 years of compressions, stitches, and holding hands at the edge of life. 3 months ago, they told her she needed a mental health break. It sounded clinical. It felt like exile. Since then, she'd lived on odd jobs, temporary clinics, night deliveries, whatever paid for gas and coffee. The truck rattled, complaining. Emily sighed, not relief, just fatigue made sound. Then she saw him. A man walked along the shoulder, limping, pushing a shopping cart filled with scrap metal, alternators, pipes, tools without handles. A box truck blared its horn, and he stumbled aside, gripping the cart. Emily hit the brakes. She watched through the mirror as he steadied himself, breathing hard. Jeans ripped at the knee, hands black with grease, a sun-faded cap pulled low. Instinct told her to keep driving. The world didn't reward soft hearts anymore. But a voice rose from somewhere deeper than fear, a boy's voice she would know forever. "Mom, helping people is what makes us strong, right?" She blinked the sting away, shifted into reverse, and rolled back until she reached him. "Hey," she said, leaning out the window. "You okay out here?" He glanced up, cautious. "Yes, ma'am. Wheel busted on this thing. I'll fix it." "You're limping." "Old injury." He tried a smile. Knee never healed after the army. Emily looked at the cart. Metal, rust, and stubborn purpose. "You selling that in Bowling Green?" "Trying to. Good day means a cheeseburger and coffee. Bad day means I keep walking. You have somewhere to go?" He let out a short breath that sounded half like a laugh. "I've got places I can't go back to. Does that count?" The road ahead was empty. Raindrops dotted the glass. Emily unlocked the door. "Get in. I'll take you to Bowling Green. You don't even know me." "I know that look," she said. "That kind of tired doesn't lie. That's enough." He studied her, then nodded. He lifted a canvas bag from the cart, propped the cart against a fence, and climbed in slowly. "What's your name?" she asked as the truck moved. "Jack Dwyer. And yours?" "Emily." "Thanks, Emily." "Don't thank me. Just don't die on the side of my road today." He chuckled softly. "Been a while since anyone cared." She didn't answer. Rain grew steady. Cornfields blurred by like memory. Jack noticed the photo on the dashboard. "Cute kid." Emily swallowed. "Danny. My son." Jack adjusted his cap, eyes on the window. He didn't speak again. The silence that followed was gentle, the kind that understands without asking. They passed a closed garage, a bar with one neon letter still flickering. Emily watched the wipers draw slow half-moons on the glass. "That cart," she said. "You know your way around engines. I know my way around broken things." His voice was low, gravel, and truth. "Sometimes you can make 'em worth something again. That's a talent. That's survival." The truck rolled over a bridge, rain tapping harder. Emily glanced at him. He pressed a hand to his knee, pain quiet but constant. She knew that look too. "Where do you want to get out?" she asked. He hesitated. "There's a place near the state line. Not sure you'll want to stop there." "Why not?" "Because some folks don't like seeing a man who fell trying to stand up." Emily kept her eyes on the road. "I've seen people stand up," she said. "It's still worth watching." For a moment he smiled, not wide, but real. Rain poured harder. The truck kept going. They didn't know it yet, but that small decision, a brake light on a lonely highway, a door unlocked, a stranger welcomed in from the rain, had just changed everything. Because sometimes Destiny's cross, not to break us, but to rebuild what we thought was lost forever. We'll go sick of the rain had softened to a mist, thin and steady, as Emily's truck rumbled through the outskirts of Cedar Falls, a small Tennessee town that looked forgotten by time. Neon signs flickered half-lit over empty diners. A stray dog dashed across the road, shaking off the storm. Inside the cab, silence lingered. Not cold, just unspoken. Jack's hands rested on his knees, rough and scarred. Emily's eyes stayed forward, one hand on the wheel, the other tracing the worn leather seam of her jacket. "Been a while since I've ridden in something with a roof," Jack finally said. Emily smiled faintly. "It leaks sometimes. Don't get too excited." He chuckled. "Still better than walking." She studied him from the corner of her eye. His profile was sharp beneath the cap, the kind of face that looked older when quiet. There was a heaviness about him, not just from the limp, but from miles of trying. "You from around here?" she asked. "Born 2 counties south. Haven't called any place home since '09. "Army," he nodded. "Mechanic. Motor pool mostly. When I came back, the jobs were gone before my paperwork cleared. Guess I just kept moving." Emily nodded slowly. "I used to think staying still made things safer. Turns out it just makes them heavier." Jack glanced at her, curious. "You don't sound like someone running from nothing." She didn't answer right away. The wipers squeaked once, twice. "Everyone's running from something," she said at last. "Some of us just make it look like driving." They reached a gas station at the edge of town. The sign above the awning read, "Cooper's Diner and Fuel Stop." Half the bulbs were out. Emily pulled in beside a pump. "Need gas," she said. "You want coffee?" Jack looked unsure. "Only if you're getting one." She opened the door before he could argue. "I'm not asking, soldier." He almost smiled. "Yes, ma'am." Inside, the diner smelled of burnt coffee and fried everything. A waitress named Ruby, tag crooked on her apron, looked up from her phone. "Evening, hun. Rain finally quit." Emily nodded. "2 coffees, black." Ruby poured, watching Jack limp toward a booth. "Your friend looks like he's been through a storm himself." Emily met her eyes. "Maybe he has." They sat opposite each other, steam curling from their mugs. Jack wrapped his hands around his cup as if to borrow its warmth. "You always pick up strangers on back roads?" he asked. "Only the interesting ones," she said. "And the ones who look like they could use a ride." He tilted his head. "Which am I?" "Both," Jack laughed softly. "Fair enough." For the first time, the air between them felt lighter. Emily noticed a chain around his neck, a dull silver tag tucked beneath his shirt. She caught a glimpse of the letters D. Dwyer before he hid it again. "You still wear that," she said. "Habit," he answered. "Reminds me there was a version of me who did things right." Emily looked down at her coffee. "Yeah, I know that feeling." Outside, thunder rolled far off, low and distant, the kind that warned of more weather on the way. Ruby came by with the check. "That'll be $6.50, sugar." Jack reached for his pocket, but Emily slid a few crumpled bills onto the table first. "Don't," he muttered. "It's coffee, Jack, not charity." He looked up, ready to argue, then saw the steady calm in her eyes and stopped. "You don't give people much room to say no, do you?" "Not when it matters." As they stepped back into the damp night, the air smelled of wet pavement and diesel. Emily unlocked the truck. Jack hesitated before getting in. "You ever think maybe you were meant to stop tonight?" he asked quietly. Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" "Could have driven right past me." "But you didn't. Maybe that means something." She stared at him for a moment, unsure whether to laugh or agree. "If it does," she said finally, "I'm not sure I want to know what." Jack nodded, almost to himself, and climbed back in. They pulled onto the road again, headlights slicing through fog. The town faded behind them, replaced by open fields and the long hum of highway. Emily's voice broke the quiet. "You said there's a place near the state line. What's there?" Jack hesitated. "An old garage. Used to be mine. Haven't seen it in years." "Yours?" "Yeah. Dwyer Auto Repair. Closed after I left for the service. Someone else runs it now. I just need to see it. Emily glanced at him. You built something once. Maybe you still can. He looked out at the rain returning in thin silver lines. Maybe, or maybe I'm just chasing ghosts. The road curved south, a sign flashing. State line ahead, 5 miles. Emily tightened her grip on the wheel, feeling the weight of something unspoken growing between them. She didn't know what waited there, for him or for her, but she knew the road wasn't done with either of them. Because sometimes marked destinies begin not where we arrive, but with the people we let back in. By the time they reached the state line, the rain had eased into a quiet drizzle. The sign for Dwyer Auto Repair appeared on the right, faded red letters, one missing completely. The building sat behind a chain-link fence, paint peeling, lights flickering weakly through the office window. Emily slowed the truck. That it? Jack nodded, jaw tight. Used to be mine, used to look better too. The lot was cluttered with old vehicles, rusted trucks, an abandoned Mustang missing its hood, a tow rig that looked dead for a decade. A man in a mechanic's coverall stepped out of the garage, wiping his hands with a rag. He was in his 40s, stocky, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who judged before speaking. Jack opened the door before the truck had even stopped. Emily followed him out. "Evening," Jack called. "You're running the place now?" The man squinted. "Yeah. Who's asking?" "Jack Dwyer. I built this shop 20 years ago." The mechanic froze for half a second, then smirked. "No kidding. The legend himself. Heard you went off the rails. Figured you were dead." Jack's jaw clenched. "Still here." "Barely." The man tossed the rag over his shoulder. "Look, whatever this is, nostalgia trip, midlife crisis, I got work to do." Emily stepped forward. "Hey, we're not here to cause trouble." He ignored her. "You're with him. Brave woman. Word around here was he took his payout, vanished, and left the crew hanging. People lost jobs, homes. You know that?" Jack didn't answer. He just looked at the ground. Emily's stomach turned. "That true?" she asked softly. Jack's voice was low. "Not the way he tells it." The man laughed under his breath. "Sure. It's never the way you tell it when you're the one who walked away." A younger mechanic came out from the shop, grease on his face, earbuds dangling. "Hey, boss, the Chevy's ready." He stopped mid-sentence, eyes landing on Jack. "Holy crap. You're that Dwyer." Jack nodded slightly. The kid grinned. "Man, my dad told stories about you. Said you could rebuild a carburetor blindfolded." The older mechanic rolled his eyes. "Yeah, well, blindfolded's about all he's been since he ran this place into the ground." The kid looked between them, confused. "I just meant, get back to work, Toby." Jack exhaled through his nose. He turned to leave, but Emily caught his arm. "Don't," she said quietly. "Not like this." He stopped, looked at her, then faced the man again. "You think I ran off with the money?" Jack said. "Truth is, I signed the shop over when I enlisted. Half the payout went to cover debts the crew left behind. The rest," he hesitated, "never made it to me." The mechanic crossed his arms. "That's convenient." Jack nodded slowly. "Yeah, it is." Emily watched the tension hang in the air like heat. Then she spoke, steady. "You don't have to believe him, but maybe you should listen before you decide who the villain is." The man studied her, unimpressed. "Lady, I've seen enough sob stories to fill a junkyard." "Then maybe you stopped seeing the real ones," Emily shot back. Silence stretched. Rain ticked on metal. Finally, the man shrugged. "Fine. You want to look around, Dwyer? Go ahead. The ghosts are still here. They've been waiting." Jack stepped through the open gate. His limp was more pronounced now. He ran a hand along the hood of a half-repaired pickup, a model he recognized from the early 2000s. His fingerprints left clean streaks through years of dust. Emily followed, glancing back at the man still watching them from the doorway. "This place meant something," she said. Jack nodded. "It was the one thing I built that worked. Until it didn't." Emily looked at him carefully. "You could fix things again. Maybe even this." He gave a quiet laugh. Not sure the world lets people like me fix things anymore. Then we'll make it let you. Jack met her eyes for the first time since they'd arrived. There was a mix of disbelief and gratitude there, the fragile look of someone not used to being defended. From the doorway, the mechanic called out, half mocking, "If you're staying long, Dwyer, try not to fall apart on my floor." Jack smirked faintly. "Wouldn't want to mess up your oil stains." Emily smiled despite herself. As they walked back toward the truck, she noticed something, a weathered signboard near the office door. The paint was peeling, but the words were still visible. "Second chances built here." Jack saw her looking and smiled, just a little. "Guess I was trying to say something back then," he murmured. "Maybe you still are," she replied. The clouds were breaking now, the last rain fading into mist. The road waited, quiet and endless. Neither of them knew it yet, but the prejudice they'd just faced would soon turn into something bigger, the spark that would test every piece of who they used to be. Because sometimes marked destinies begin where the world stops believing in you. The next morning came grey and humid, with the sky hanging low over Cedar Falls, like it hadn't decided whether to rain again. Emily slept in the truck, wrapped in an old flannel, the faint sound of wind chimes from a nearby porch drifting through the half-open window. Jack had been up since dawn. She found him standing by the garage fence, staring at a rusted Chevy Silverado parked half disassembled beside a junk pile. "You don't sleep much, do you?" she asked, stepping out, rubbing her eyes. Jack shrugged. "Never learned how after Iraq. Too loud inside my head." Emily walked closer. "That yours?" "Used to be. Belonged to an old friend. I sold it to keep the lights on back when things started falling apart." He brushed his hand over the hood, feeling the grime, the years. "Guess he left it here to die." Inside the garage, the younger mechanic, Toby, was arguing with the owner from last night, Rick Bolton. "The alternator's shot," Toby said. "We need a new one. Nothing in the yard fits." Rick cursed under his breath. "Customer wants that truck today. We lose this job, we lose the rest of his fleet." Jack, hearing that, called out from the gate, "Let me take a look." Rick turned, already irritated. "We've got it handled." Toby looked between them. "You sure, boss?" I said I've got it handled." Jack ignored the dismissal and limped closer anyway. "If it's the alternator, it's not just the part. It's the mount. Some of those older brackets don't line up with the newer housings." Rick crossed his arms. "And you'd know that because I designed that mod," Jack said. "Right here, in 2002. Rick blinked, uncertain. "You're full of it." Jack gestured toward the truck. "Give me 10 minutes. Rick hesitated, then finally nodded, more to prove him wrong than out of faith. "Fine, 10 minutes. Don't break anything I have to fix later." Emily leaned against the fence, watching. Jack rolled up his sleeves and opened the hood with a practiced movement. His fingers, scarred and steady, moved over the engine like reading Braille. He listened to the belt, felt the tension, tapped the casing with a wrench. The sound was sharp, hollow, wrong. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, brushes are gone." Toby stepped closer, curious. "How can you tell? Just by—" Jack held up the wrench. "Sound. She's been overcharged too long. Batteries draining it dry." He grabbed a box of parts from a shelf, rummaging like someone who already knew exactly where everything used to be. Within minutes, he pulled out an older alternator, stripped the bracket, adjusted the spacing with a file, and used a short bolt to realign the tensioner. Emily watched him, calm, deliberate, absorbed. It wasn't about proving anything, it was about remembering who he was. When he finished, he wiped his hands on a rag and nodded to Toby. "Crank it!" The kid jumped into the driver's seat. The engine turned once, twice, then roared to life, smooth and full. Toby's eyes went wide. "No way, that's perfect." Rick stared, disbelief breaking into reluctant respect. "What the hell did you just do?" Jack smiled slightly. "Didn't fix it, just listened to what it was saying." Emily couldn't help but smile too. For the first time since they'd met, Jack didn't look tired. He looked alive. Toby leaned out the window, grinning. You could teach half the guys in town a thing or two. Rick muttered. Yeah, well, maybe the old man still remembers a trick or two. Jack didn't respond. He just stepped back, letting the sound of the engine fill the air. For a moment, the garage felt like it belonged to him again. Rick finally spoke. That was luck. Maybe, Jack said. But luck doesn't turn bolts. Rick frowned but didn't argue. We've got another job coming in this afternoon, a county van. You want to keep playing mechanic? Be here at noon. No pay if you screw it up. Jack nodded. Deal. When Rick walked away, Toby turned to Jack, eyes still bright. Man, that was insane. You just heard it? Jack smirked. Engines talk. People just stop listening. Emily walked up beside him. You know, for someone who doesn't believe in second chances, you're doing a good job earning one. Jack looked at her, the hint of a smile returning. Guess I needed someone to remind me they still exist. The sound of the Chevy idling steady behind them filled the moment. Not loud, not dramatic, just true, because sometimes redemption doesn't start with applause. It starts with the quiet hum of something broken running again. By noon, the shop was busy. Rain had given way to heat, and the air shimmered above the cracked asphalt. Engines hummed in different keys, metal clanked, and somewhere a country radio whispered through static. Rick Bolton stood near the office, clipboard in hand, watching Jack work from a distance. He hadn't said a word since that morning, but everyone could feel the change, quiet, like tension before a storm. Jack was bent over the open hood of a county maintenance van, sleeves rolled, grease on his forearms. Beside him, Toby watched closely, handing tools, trying to keep up. You always this fast? The kid asked. Jack smirked. I used to be faster. My knee disagrees these days. You sure you don't want to use the lift? Jack shook his head. Takes too long. These old suspensions tell you more when you're eye level. Emily leaned against the doorway, coffee in hand, watching. She'd come by thinking she'd just drop him off, but something about seeing Jack in his element, confident, focused, quiet, made her stay. He wasn't the same man she'd picked up on that rainy highway. He moved with purpose now, every gesture measured, every sound in the engine meaning something only he could hear. A group of county workers stood nearby, waiting for their van, muttering among themselves. Didn't know Rick hired homeless vets now, one of them said under his breath. Toby glared at them. You mean the guy fixing your truck while you stand there talking? The man shrugged. Hope he knows what he's doing. Jack's voice cut through the air, calm but firm. You can always come back next week when the real mechanic has time, or you can let me finish so you make your shift. The workers went quiet. One of them, older, kinder, nodded respectfully. No offense, man, just surprised. You've got steady hands for someone who's been off the grid. Jack didn't look up. Hands remember even when life doesn't. Emily smiled. That line felt like something she'd want to write down. Toby crouched beside the van. What's wrong with it anyway? Ground fault, Jack said. See the flicker when the ignition's on? Shorts buried under the relay harness. Someone spliced the wire wrong. He pointed, traced it with his finger, then cut and re-soldered it in seconds. The kid watched like it was magic. How'd you see that? I didn't, Jack said. I listened. Rick walked over, arms crossed. You done? Try it, Jack said. Rick turned the key. The van came alive instantly, the dashboard lights steady, engine purring. The group of county guys exchanged impressed looks. Guess that fixes that, Rick muttered, trying not to sound impressed. The older worker extended a hand toward Jack. Name's Carl Henderson. Appreciate the quick work. County's been waiting a week for this van. Jack wiped his hands on a rag before shaking. Glad to help. Carl looked around, then back at Rick. If he's not on payroll, he should be. County'll send a few more jobs this month. Always need someone who knows what the hell they're doing. Rick hesitated, caught between pride and business sense. We'll see. Carl grinned at Jack. You ever want steady work? You let me know. We've got contracts for maintenance techs. Pay's not bad. Jack nodded. Appreciate it. When the county crew drove off, Rick finally spoke. Don't get used to this. One good fix doesn't erase the past. Jack looked him straight in the eye. Then I'll keep fixing things until it does. Rick didn't have an answer for that. Later that afternoon, Toby brought Jack a cold bottle of water. You know, people in town talk, the kid said. They say you used to be the best. Jack chuckled softly. People say a lot of things. Yeah, but this time they're saying it with respect. Jack took a long drink, eyes distant. Respect's just curiosity wearing a better suit. Emily, still nearby, heard that and shook her head with a smile. You keep talking like that and you'll end up in a book. He laughed quietly. Only if it's filed under bad decisions and broken engines. The sun was setting when they closed the shop. Rick walked past without a word, but Toby gave Jack a quick thumbs up before locking up the gate. As Emily and Jack headed toward the truck, the sound of crickets replaced the hum of the garage. The air smelled like oil and dust and something new, not quite redemption yet, but recognition. She looked at him as they reached the truck door. You know you're starting to look like someone who belongs somewhere again. Jack smiled faintly. Or maybe I'm just finally in the right story. They both laughed, quietly, easily, the way people do when hope starts to feel real again. Because sometimes marked destinies don't announce themselves with applause. They start with a single nod, and the first person brave enough to say, I see you. 2 days passed. The rhythm of the shop had changed, subtly but unmistakably. Toby worked faster, customers lingered longer, even Rick seemed quieter when Jack was around. But that morning something was off. Emily could feel it the moment she pulled up. Jack stood outside, his phone pressed to his ear, an old flip phone borrowed from the office. His expression was tight, jaw clenched. Who was that? She asked when he hung up. Jack hesitated. Carl Henderson, from the county. Something wrong? Yeah. His son's truck broke down outside Maple Ridge. Engine seized on a bridge. Ambulance can't reach him because of road work. They're trying to get a tow, but he said his kid's inside, and the truck's blocking the only way out for the construction crew. Emily's nurse instincts flared instantly. Anyone hurt? Carl's boy has asthma. He's got his inhaler, but it's out, and the kid's panicking. Jesus, she whispered. Jack rubbed the back of his neck. It's about 20 miles east. No one's going to get there for an hour. Emily stared at him. Then we go. Rick, stepping out of the office, caught the last words. Go where? Jack turned. Maple Ridge. Carl's kid's stuck out there. Rick frowned. That's not our problem. County's got responders for that. Jack's voice stayed calm but sharp. They're not there yet. Rick snorted. We're not heroes, Dwyer. We fix cars. We don't chase chaos. Jack's patience snapped. Not loud but final. You fix cars. I fix what I can. Without another word, he grabbed his jacket, limped to the truck, and climbed in. Emily was already behind the wheel. Rick shouted after them. You're wasting gas and time, Dwyer. Jack leaned out the window. Then dock my pay. They drove fast, the road slick from overnight rain, clouds building again above the hills. Emily's knuckles tightened on the wheel. You sure you know where we're going? She asked, roughly. Carl said it's just past the bridge on Route 47. And what exactly are we going to do when we get there? Jack looked at the toolbox in the back seat. Same thing we always do. Figure it out. They found the bridge 15 minutes later. A narrow metal span over a deep creek. A small Ford Ranger sat dead in the center, hood up, steam rising. A young man, maybe 19, that was pacing, coughing, his breathing shallow. Emily jumped out before the truck even stopped. Hey, I'm a nurse. You need to stay still. Jack followed her, already scanning the truck. The boy tried to speak, but his voice rasped. Can't breathe right. Emily knelt, pulling her medical kit from her bag. You have an inhaler? He pointed weakly to the passenger seat. She found it, shook it. Empty. Damn it! Jack's voice came from under the hood. Engine overheated, belt slipped, fans dead. Emily looked over. Forget the truck, he needs air. Jack didn't look up. Working on it. He tore through his toolbox, pulled a small hose and a clamp, then took an empty coolant bottle from the truck bed. In seconds, he was rigging something together. What are you doing? Emily asked. Turning this into a compressor, she blinked. You can't watch me. He connected the hose to the intake, used the bottle as a pressure chamber, and hot-wired the fan motor to push cool air toward the boy's face. The sound was rough, sputtering, but air flowed. Emily's eyes widened. You just built a ventilator out of a coolant bottle. Jack looked up briefly. Told you. I fix what I can. The boy's breathing slowed. Color returned to his face. Emily smiled in disbelief. His pulse is stabilizing. Jack nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. Good. Ambulance will make it soon. As sirens began to echo faintly in the distance, the young man reached out, hand trembling. Thank you. Jack just squeezed his shoulder. Don't thank me. Thank the road for breaking where it did. When the paramedics arrived, Emily stepped back, letting them take over. One of them, a young woman, stared at Jack's improvised device. Who did this? Emily pointed at him. He did. The medic shook her head, half smiling. That's genius. Crude, but genius. Jack shrugged. Sometimes genius just means desperate enough to try. As they drove back, neither spoke for a while. The road gleamed wet under the grey sky. Finally, Emily said softly, You didn't have to do that. Jack looked out the window. Maybe not, but that kid reminded me of someone. Your son? He didn't answer right away. No, me, when I still thought fixing things was enough. She glanced at him. It still is. You just fixed more than an engine today. Jack smiled faintly, the kind that comes from something deeper than pride. Don't tell Rick, he'll think I'm going soft. Emily laughed, the sound quiet but genuine. Because sometimes marked destinies aren't forged in triumph, but in the moments when someone decides not to look away. 2 days after the Maple Ridge rescue, Jack's name was on everyone's lips. Not in a celebrity way. In the small-town way, stories spread, quietly, through gas stations, diners, and Sunday morning chatter. The vet who saved that kid. The drifter who fixed an engine with junk parts. The man working at Bolton's garage. Emily saw it happening. People stopped whispering when Jack walked by. Some nodded. Some looked guilty for what they'd said before, but Rick Bolton wasn't thrilled. He hated anything that made him feel small in his own shop. Dwyer, he said that morning, slapping a clipboard onto the counter. County just called. Big job. Road patrol truck broke down near the Ridge intersection. Engine dead, hydraulics locked, lights out. They need it tonight. Think you're up for that, or should I send Toby? Jack wiped his hands on a rag. I'll take it. Good, because if you screw this one up, you're done here. Jack gave a quiet nod. Fair. Emily, sitting nearby with her coffee, frowned. He's setting you up. Jack shrugged. Maybe, but engines don't care about politics. She smirked. Neither do you. They drove together again. She refused to let him go alone this time. The storm clouds from the night before were gathering again, low and mean, the kind that turned daylight into warning. The road to the Ridge was long, lined with telephone poles and fields that looked like oceans of gold and green. The county truck wasn't hard to find. Bright orange, tilted sideways in a ditch, hazard lights dead, hood smoking. Jack climbed out, grabbed his tools. Hydraulic failure, he muttered, already scanning. Emily watched as he crawled under the frame, mud soaking into his jeans. The wind was rising, and thunder rumbled in the distance. Jack, you've got maybe 20 minutes before that storm hits, she warned. Then I'll take 19. Rick's voice echoed faintly in his head. Don't screw this up. He ignored it. Focus, always focus. He unbolted the pump casing, pried open the relay housing, and felt the wires, warm, sticky, wrong. Then he saw it. Corrosion in the solenoid coil. Emily crouched beside him. You can't replace that out here. No, Jack said, but I can rebuild it. With what? He looked at her, then at the truck's broken hazard bar. Plastic casing, conductor strip. A little faith. The rain started as a whisper, then came down like spilled gravel. Jack's hands moved faster. He cut the casing, stripped wire, twisted, sealed. Every sound, wind, thunder, water, blurred into background noise. Emily held a flashlight over him, her jacket soaked through. "You're gonna get struck by lightning if you stay under there." Jack grinned. "Then you'll have to finish the wiring." She rolled her eyes but didn't move. Minutes passed like hours. The storm grew violent, wind whipping the trees, lightning tearing the horizon. Jack connected the final lead, ducked out from under the truck and yelled, "Try it!" Emily reached in through the driver's window and turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. The hydraulic pump hummed. The floodlights flickered on, illuminating the rain in brilliant sheets. Emily laughed, half relief, half disbelief. "You did it!" Jack stood there, drenched, looking like a man pulled straight out of a storm. "Told you I'd take 19 minutes. As they packed up, a county sheriff's SUV pulled up behind them. Out stepped Carl Henderson, the same man whose son Jack had saved. "Dwyer," he called. "You really don't know how to quit, do you?" Jack smiled faintly. "Some things don't let you." Carl looked over the repaired truck, amazed. "That vehicle runs 2 rescue routes for the county. If it was down tonight, a lot of folks would be stranded in this weather." Emily said softly, "He doesn't do it for thanks." Carl nodded. "Yeah, but he deserves it anyway." He extended his hand. "County's setting up a bid for new maintenance contracts next week. You should apply." Jack hesitated. "I don't have a business anymore." "Then start one again," Carl said. "You've already earned the name back." Jack shook his hand. The thunder cracked behind them like a final applause. As the storm cleared, Emily and Jack climbed back into the truck. She watched him quietly. "You ever wonder," she said, "why it's always storms that find you?" Jack chuckled. "Maybe they're just trying to see if I still hold up." She smiled. "You always do." They drove on, the rain fading behind them, headlights carving new lines across the dark. Because sometimes marked destinies don't test what you can fix. They test how long you'll keep trying when everything says you shouldn't. They drove in silence for a long time after the storm. The world outside the windows was washed clean, roads shining, trees dripping silver, the sky clearing into an impossible blue. Emily leaned her head against the glass, watching the blur of telephone poles pass by. "You ever going to tell me what really happened back then?" she asked quietly. Jack didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the road, hands steady on the wheel. "I've heard versions," she continued. "Rick says you ran. The town says you failed. The army says you disappeared." He gave a tired smile. "Sounds like I've been busy." "I'm serious," Jack sighed. The sound was low, old, like a door opening to a room he'd sealed years ago. "You ever lose something so bad you start thinking you deserved it?" Emily turned toward him. "Yeah, I have." He nodded once, eyes still forward. "Then you'll understand this." He pulled the truck over onto a gravel turnout overlooking the valley. The air smelled of wet earth and diesel. Down below, the river wound between hills, brown and swollen from the rain. Jack got out, leaning against the doorframe. His voice was soft, careful. 15 years ago, this shop wasn't just mine. It was everything. I had 3 guys working for me, all good men. We were tight. Brothers, really. Then we took a big job for a logistics company. New fleet of trucks, 20 vehicles, biggest contract we ever landed. Emily listened without interrupting. Deadlines were impossible. I stayed at the shop 72 hours straight trying to make it work. I was so damn sure I could do everything myself. Then one of the guys, Luke, fell asleep at the wheel delivering the last truck. He didn't make it. The words came out heavy, stripped of any defense. Emily's eyes softened. "You blamed yourself." "I was to blame," Jack said. "He told me he was exhausted. I told him to push through, said we couldn't afford to miss the deadline." He looked out at the river, his reflection trembling in the glass. The company used the accident as an excuse to terminate the contract. Insurance refused to cover. The shop folded in 6 months. Luke's wife never forgave me. Can't say I blamed her. Emily stepped closer. "Is that why you enlisted?" He nodded. "Figured maybe I could do something useful again, something that hurt only me this time." "And the leg?" "Second deployment. Convoy hit an IED outside Fallujah. Woke up in a hospital with a knee that clicks every time it rains and a head full of ghosts." He let out a small, humorless laugh. So, yeah, when Rick says I left people behind, he's not wrong. I just didn't leave the same way he thinks. Emily reached out and touched his arm. You didn't walk away from people, Jack. You walked away from pain. Didn't help much, he said. No, it never does. But you're here now, and maybe that means something. Jack turned toward her, eyes wet but steady. You really believe in that? In meaning? She smiled softly. I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of surviving? The wind moved through the valley like a slow breath. He pulled from his pocket a small bent dog tag. Not his, Emily realized, but someone else's. The name Luke Harper was stamped into it. I kept it, Jack said quietly. Not because I thought I could make it right, but because it reminds me what happens when you stop listening. Emily nodded, tears shining. Then maybe it's time to start listening again. For a long moment neither spoke. The river below shimmered under the clearing sky, endless, alive. Jack finally put the tag back in his pocket. You ever wonder, he said, voice almost breaking, if destiny just keeps sending us the same lesson until we finally learn it? Emily smiled through her tears. Maybe that's why they call it Marked Destinies. He looked at her, something breaking and rebuilding inside him at the same time. I used to hate that word, destiny, he said, felt like an excuse for bad choices. And now? Now, I think maybe it's just another word for second chances. She reached out, squeezed his hand. Then don't waste yours. Jack nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. Not this time. The camera would linger there, two broken souls framed against a recovering sky, a quiet promise between them and the road ahead. Because sometimes marked destinies aren't about punishment. They're about people brave enough to face their own ghosts and keep driving anyway. The next morning came with sunlight, soft, golden, almost shy. Dew glistened on the fields as Emily's truck rolled into Cedar Falls. The town seemed different now, brighter, quieter, like it had exhaled something heavy. They stopped at Cooper's Diner, the same place where they'd shared coffee days ago. The bell over the door chimed as they stepped inside. Ruby, the waitress, looked up and smiled. Well, look who's still alive, she said. Word is, you two went storm chasing. Emily grinned. Something like that. Jack just nodded. Coffee, please. Black. As they sat, Jack looked out the window. Across the street, Rick's garage was open. The sound of tools clinking carried faintly through the morning air. Emily followed his gaze. You think he'll keep you on? Jack shrugged. Doesn't matter. Was never really about the job. Then what was it about? He thought for a moment, hearing an engine breathe again, reminding myself I still can. Before she could answer, the door opened. Carl Henderson, the county official, walked in, still wearing his uniform shirt and that steady smile. Mind if I join you two? He asked. Please, Emily said. Carl slid into the booth. Heard you saved the county again, he said to Jack. That truck you fixed? It ran a 12-hour shift last night without a hiccup. That's rare. Jack sipped his coffee. Glad to hear it. Carl leaned forward. I wasn't kidding about what I said at the bridge. We've got a new county maintenance program launching next month. Contracts for local shops to handle fleet repairs. Rick doesn't have the manpower or reputation to get it. But you've got both now. Jack frowned slightly. I don't have a shop, or a license, or a crew. Carl smiled. You've got me, and you've got her. He nodded toward Emily. And that's a start. Emily raised an eyebrow. Wait, you're serious? Dead serious, Carl said. The county can sponsor startup certification. We'll cover the paperwork if he covers the work. Jack leaned back, studying him. Why me? Carl's smile faded into something more thoughtful. Because my kid's breathing right now, thanks to you. Because you didn't have to stop on that bridge. But you did. And because this town could use someone who still gives a damn. Jack looked down at his hands, scarred, trembling slightly. I'm not that guy anymore. Carl shook his head. You are? You just forgot for a while. Emily watched the exchange, her eyes soft. He's right, Jack. You can't keep paying for what's already done. Jack looked between them. Two people who saw something in him he hadn't seen in years. He laughed quietly, shaking his head. "You two really don't quit, do you?" "Not when it's worth it," Emily said. Carl slid a small folder across the table. "Paperwork for a temporary permit. You fill this out, you can operate under the county's name for 60 days. After that, we'll help you apply for a grant. Call it a new beginning." Jack stared at the folder, the county seal printed on the front. His reflection shimmered faintly in the plastic cover. Older, wearier, but still alive. He didn't touch it. Not yet. Emily reached over, placing her hand lightly on his. "Jack," she said softly, "this isn't about fixing engines anymore. It's about fixing you." He met her eyes, searching, unsure. "You really think I can do that?" She smiled. "I think you already started." For a long time, no one spoke. Outside, a breeze lifted the diner's flag, sunlight flickering through the window blinds. Finally, Jack took a deep breath, opened the folder, and began to read. Carl grinned. "That's what I wanted to see." Emily leaned back, watching the man across from her, the man who'd once been invisible, now slowly becoming visible again. Jack looked up. "If I'm doing this, it's on one condition." Carl raised an eyebrow. "Name it." "I don't want it to be just a repair shop. I want it to be something more. A place that teaches people who lost their way, vets, dropouts, whoever, how to work with their hands again, how to build something they can be proud of." Carl nodded slowly, impressed. "I think we can make that happen." Emily smiled, eyes glinting. "You just turned a second chance into a mission." Jack closed the folder and said quietly, "Then let's build something that lasts." The bell over the door rang again as they stepped out into the sunlight. Because sometimes marked destinies aren't given. They're offered to those finally brave enough to reach out and take them. The 3 weeks later, Dwyer Auto Repair was more than a name on a dusty sign. It was alive again. The old garage had been cleaned, repainted, and lit by a dozen hanging bulbs. The air smelled like oil and coffee. The sound of tools, laughter, and music filled the space. Emily had hung a small banner on the wall. "Second chances built here." Toby now worked full-time beside Jack. Carl helped file permits. And people who'd once ignored Jack now stopped by with jobs, food, or just curiosity. For the first time in years, the man who'd once lost everything was home. But destiny never lets you get comfortable. It waits until you start to believe, and then it tests what you've built. It happened on a Friday afternoon. The sun was falling low, painting the garage windows gold, when a county emergency truck screeched into the lot. The driver, a firefighter in uniform, jumped out, panic in his eyes. "Dwyer, we need help, now!" Jack stepped forward, wiping his hands. "What's going on?" "Flood control unit. The main generator on the dam failed. The backup's shot too. If it's not running within the hour, the reservoir's gonna spill over. We'll lose half the town's south end." Jack froze. "You called the state engineers?" "They're 2 hours out. We've got 45 minutes. You're the only one who can even get close to the site without authorization." Carl arrived moments later, breathing hard. "Jack, I vouched for you. They're letting you try, but it's bad. Power relays fried, hydraulics stuck. It's all manual from here." Jack looked at Emily. Her eyes were steady, fearless. "You're going," she said. He nodded once. "Toby, grab my kit and a spool of 10-gauge copper wire." The road to the dam cut through hills slick with rain. Emergency lights glowed ahead like distant stars. When they arrived, uniformed workers were shouting, water roaring through the spillway below. The smell of ozone filled the air, the dam's control building flickering with sparks. Jack didn't wait for permission. He pushed past the caution tape, dropped his tool bag, and got to work. "Power's dead," an engineer shouted. "The regulator board burned out. We can't bypass the lockout." Jack opened the control panel. Melted circuits, smoke still curling. "Who wired this mess?" he muttered. Emily stood beside him, holding a flashlight. "Can you fix it?" "Not fix, rebuild." "You've got 30 minutes, the foreman yelled. "Then I better move faster," Jack said. He stripped the board bare, fingers working with mechanical precision. Every move had rhythm, snip, twist. twist, solder, test. He rewired the voltage regulator using leftover copper and a relay from an old control unit. The others watched, whispering, "Who is this guy?" "Some vet, I think. Looks like he's been here before." Jack ignored them all. Sweat ran down his temples, his bad knee trembled, but his hands never wavered. Emily crouched beside him. "You need me to do anything? Hold the line steady, and don't let me black out." She frowned. "Why would you black—" A spark burst from the circuit. Jack flinched, pain flashing across his face. "Jack, I'm fine." He gritted his teeth, continuing. "The surge is close. We're near full current." Lightning split the sky outside, thunder shaking the dam. Time was running out. He jammed the final wire into place, twisted it tight, then grabbed the manual lever to reset the hydraulic pumps. Nothing. He pulled harder. The lever didn't budge. Emily stepped forward. "Let me help!" "No," Jack said, voice strained. "The coupling's seized." "I need more torque." He braced one foot against the wall, threw his weight into the lever, and it gave, screeching metal echoing like a scream. The generators coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. The lights flickered, once, twice, then steadied. The crowd of workers erupted in cheers. Sirens switched to steady green. The spillway gates began to close, the roaring water slowing to a controlled flow. Jack leaned against the wall, chest heaving, eyes glassy from exhaustion. Emily grabbed his shoulders. "You did it," she whispered. He smiled weakly. "Told you, I don't quit easy." The foreman ran in, soaked and shouting, "You saved the whole damn town! Who are you, man?" Jack looked at him and simply said, "Someone trying to make up for old mistakes." Later, as they stood outside the dam, the rain had stopped. The night was cool, the air humming with electricity and relief. Carl clapped Jack on the back. "That's 2 rescues and 1 miracle in under a month. The county's going to make it official. Permanent contract, emergency operations license, the works." Jack looked down, humble, almost shy. "I wasn't alone." He nodded toward Emily. "Couldn't have done any of it without her." Emily smiled softly. "We're just getting started." Above them, the town lights twinkled faintly in the distance. Alive, because one man refused to give up. Because sometimes marked destinies don't explode into glory. They hum quietly, in the steady sound of power returning to a town that forgot what hope sounded like. The night after the dam was saved, Cedar Falls was alive with gratitude. Headlines spread fast. Local mechanic prevents catastrophic flood. Veterans quick thinking saves town. For a place that rarely made the news, it was a miracle. But miracles have a price. By morning, the celebration had faded into normal noise, and Jack's shop was quiet again. He stood in the garage alone, the steady hum of the repaired generator echoing like a heartbeat he couldn't shut off. Emily found him sitting on the edge of the workbench, staring at his hands, bruised, trembling slightly. "You didn't go to the county briefing?" she asked. Jack shook his head. "Didn't need to. They'll be fine without me. Carl said your name's going to be on the commendation. That's—" "I don't want it," he interrupted. His voice wasn't angry, just tired. "I didn't do it for applause." Emily studied him. "You did it for Luke." He looked up sharply, caught off guard. She went on softly. "You think I didn't notice the dog tag you keep in your pocket? You've been trying to save him ever since you couldn't." Jack swallowed hard, looked away. "Maybe. Doesn't change anything." "Maybe it does," she said. "You saved an entire town, Jack. Maybe it's time to save yourself." He laughed, bitter, hollow. "I don't know how." And then the sound came, the faint metallic click from his knee brace. He winced, leaned forward, pain shooting up his leg. Emily rushed to him. "You okay?" "Just pushed it too far," he said, gritting his teeth. "That climb at the dam, I felt something tear." "Jack." He tried to stand but couldn't. The old injury had caught up to him, worse now. His face tightened as he sank back down. "Don't," Emily said softly. "You need rest." "I need work," he muttered. "If I stop, it all goes backward." She knelt in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You can't build second chances on broken bones." He looked at her, pain and pride warring in his expression. "I've been broken for years, Emily. That's never stopped me." She shook her head. "No, but it's starting to kill you." The air between them went still. Outside, thunder rolled again in the distance. Softer this time, almost like memory. He finally spoke. "You ever think maybe people like me don't get happy endings? Maybe our job is just to fix things until we fall apart?" Emily's eyes glistened. "Then fall in the right place." He didn't know how to answer that. He just looked down at his hands again. The same hands that had once built engines, wrecked lives and rebuilt hope. That evening, Carl stopped by with paperwork, the official county contract, a check, and the letter of commendation. "Congratulations," he said gently. "You earned this." Jack didn't even open it. "I'm not sure I deserve it." Carl studied him. "You think redemption means wiping out what you did wrong. It doesn't. It means what you do next." He left the envelope on the workbench and walked away. Jack sat there long after dark, staring at it. The rain began again outside, tapping the tin roof like a quiet clock. Emily eventually came back, holding a thermos of coffee. "You planning to open it?" "Not yet." She sat beside him. "You know, it's okay to rest. The world won't fall apart without you for one night." He smiled faintly. "You sure?" "Pretty sure." They sat together in silence, the only sound the rain. Jack finally whispered, almost to himself, "Luke used to say storms were just the sky remembering something it lost." Emily turned to him. "Maybe that's what you're doing too." He nodded slowly, eyes distant. "Maybe. I just wish remembering didn't hurt so much." She put her hand over his, warm and steady. "It only hurts because it still matters." The lights flickered once, then steadied. The rain eased. In the dim glow of the garage, surrounded by the ghosts of his past and the machines he'd brought back to life, Jack Dwyer finally allowed himself to breathe. It wasn't triumph, it wasn't peace, but it was real, and for now, that was enough. Because sometimes, marked destinies don't collapse when the world breaks them. They collapse when they finally let themselves stop running. The morning came slow and pale. The rain had ended during the night, and now the air felt cleaner, lighter somehow. Sunlight slipped through the garage windows, tracing gold lines across the concrete floor. Jack stirred awake in the old leather chair, still in his work clothes, the envelope Carl had left sitting untouched on his chest. His leg ached, his head felt heavy, but there was something new underneath the pain. Stillness. He sat up, rubbed his face, and looked around the shop. Tools hung neatly on the wall. The sign Emily had painted, "Second Chances Built Here," gleamed in the morning light. For the first time, Jack realized the place didn't look haunted anymore. It looked alive. He stood slowly, limping toward the workbench. The dog tag in his pocket clinked softly as he moved. He took it out, ran his thumb over the engraved name, Luke Harper. "Hey, brother," he murmured, "I think I finally get it." He set the tag down gently beside the envelope and exhaled. Then, with hands still trembling, he tore it open. Inside was the official county commendation and a check, but what caught his eye was the letter beneath it. Handwritten. From Carl. "Jack, if I've learned one thing watching you, it's that fixing machines and fixing people aren't that different. Both need patience, pressure, and someone who won't quit when it gets messy. The town doesn't just owe you gratitude, it owes you a future. Don't waste it." Carl Jack smiled, quiet and broken and whole at the same time. At that moment, the garage door creaked open. Emily stepped in, 2 coffees in hand. "You look like someone who's been talking to ghosts again," she said, handing him a cup. He took it, nodding. "Guess they finally started listening back." She sipped her coffee, watching him. "You gonna cash that check?" "Eventually," he said, "but first I'm gonna do something better with it." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh, yeah? What's better than money?" Jack turned to the workbench, grabbed a scrap of cardboard and started writing. The marker squeaked as he drew the words with careful, steady strokes. When he finished, he held it up. "Community Repair Workshop, for veterans and dreamers." Emily smiled, eyes glinting. "You really mean it?" "I do," he said. If I got a second chance, others should too. No one should have to earn redemption alone. She nodded, pride softening her voice. That's beautiful, Jack. He shrugged, trying to hide the emotion in his throat. Nah, just practical. She stepped closer. You're finally learning to build things that last. He looked at her, the faintest grin tugging at his lips. That's the idea. By afternoon, the sign was taped to the window. Toby helped clean the lot. Carl brought over paperwork for the new program. Ruby from the diner dropped off sandwiches. Word spread, and by sunset, the first visitors came. A retired mechanic with shaky hands, a teenager who'd dropped out of school, a single mother whose car hadn't run in months. Jack greeted each one personally. No speeches, no promises, just an open door and the smell of grease and coffee. Emily watched from the doorway, arms crossed, smiling quietly as she saw him moving among them. Teaching, laughing, living. She knew that look. It was peace, the kind born from purpose, not perfection. Later, when the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack stepped outside. The sky was streaked in orange and violet, the air warm and calm. He pulled the dog tag from his pocket one last time, looked at it, then hung it on a nail beside the shop door. Rest easy, Luke, he whispered. We're fixing things again. Emily joined him, leaning against the truck. Feels different tonight, she said. Jack nodded. Because it is. For the first time in a long time, it feels like the future. The camera would linger on that. The light fading, the garage glowing, the sign on the wall catching the last glint of sun. Second chances built here. Because sometimes marked destinies aren't about escaping the past. They're about finding the courage to build something new on top of it. By mid-autumn, Cedar Falls had changed. What began as a small-town garage had turned into something much bigger. The new sign outside read, Dwyer Community Workshop. Veterans, students, and second chances. Every morning, the smell of coffee and motor oil mixed with laughter and metal. Kids in worn jackets learned to rebuild carburetors beside veterans who hadn't touched a wrench in years. Emily ran first aid workshops every weekend, teaching basic medical skills in the same space where Jack taught mechanics. It wasn't perfect. The roof still leaked when it rained. The floor was permanently stained, but it was alive. Word spread beyond Cedar Falls. Local news came first, then regional media. The story headline read, From Broken Soldier to Builder of Hope, the mechanic who repaired more than engines. Jack hated the attention. He tried to hide in the back whenever cameras showed up, but one afternoon, Carl caught him trying to slip away during an interview. Where do you think you're going? Carl asked, laughing. Back to work, Jack muttered. Engines don't fix themselves. Carl clapped him on the shoulder. Neither do people. That's why they need to see this. To see you. Emily agreed. Let them. You've spent your life hiding from the past. Maybe it's time you showed them what it looks like when someone wins it back. So he stayed. Breeze, you're seeing the reporter was young, eager, and a little too polished for small-town Tennessee. She asked questions with wide eyes and a microphone that felt out of place among oil cans and wrenches. Mr. Dwyer, can you tell us how this all started? Jack hesitated, glancing toward Emily, who nodded gently. He exhaled. I broke something a long time ago. Thought I could never fix it. Turns out, fixing other things, helping other people, helps more than you think. The reporter smiled. So this is about redemption? Jack shrugged. It's about work, about people learning they're not defined by what went wrong, but by what they do next. The room went quiet for a moment. Even the machine seemed to pause. Carl leaned toward the reporter. You should put that on your headline. Everyone laughed softly. The tension broke. But that evening, the town held a small ceremony outside the workshop. Strings of lights hung between poles, and someone from the diner brought trays of barbecue and cornbread. Families gathered, kids played near the parking lot, and the air smelled like smoke and home. Rick Bolton stood at the edge of the crowd, watching. He hadn't said much since Jack reopened the place. Pride and regret mixed on his face like oil and water. When Carl stepped up to the small makeshift stage, microphone in hand, his voice carried through the warm autumn air. Cedar Falls isn't the kind of town that gets headlines, he began. We're farmers, mechanics, teachers, dreamers, but sometimes one person reminds us what we're made of, that kindness still matters, that second chances still build something real. He turned toward Jack. This man didn't just fix a dam or a truck, he fixed faith in all of us. The crowd applauded. Jack tried to disappear into his seat, but Emily nudged him forward. He shook his head. She whispered, "Go." He walked up slowly, hands in his pockets. The applause faded. He looked out at the faces, the same people who once avoided his eyes at gas stations or whispered when he passed. Now they waited, silent. "I don't know how to give speeches," he began. "Never been good at talking unless it's to a machine." Soft laughter rippled through the crowd. "But I've learned something these last few months," he continued. "Every engine, every machine, every person, they all break eventually. And yeah, sometimes the damage looks permanent, but that doesn't mean it is. Sometimes you just need the right hands, and someone willing to believe it's worth fixing." He looked at Emily, then Carl, then the people. "I spent years running from the sound of things falling apart, but now I think maybe that sound was just the world making room for something new." A hush settled over the crowd, the kind of silence that holds respect. Then Toby shouted from the back, "That's my boss!" Laughter burst out again, applause following, genuine, loud, alive. Jack smiled, awkward, humble, but glowing. He stepped down from the small stage, and Rick approached him. For a moment, they just stood there, two men bound by years of resentment and misunderstanding. Rick finally said, "I was wrong about you." Jack nodded. "I was wrong about me too." They shook hands. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was something close. Emily watched from across the lot, eyes glistening, her smile quiet and proud. As the night deepened, lights twinkled above the crowd, and laughter filled the space once haunted by silence. The camera would pull back, showing the glowing workshop in the middle of the small town, people dancing, children running, and Jack standing beneath the sign that now meant something more than words. Because sometimes marked destinies aren't celebrated with medals or fame. They're honored in the way a community learns to breathe again, together. Winter came quietly to Cedar Falls. Snow dusted the roofs, the streets. The rusted signs that once looked tired now looked peaceful under white. The town's hum had changed, slower but steadier. People smiled more, nodded more, helped more. And at the center of it all stood Dwyer Community Workshop. The garage, once dark and hollow, now glowed from sunrise to sunset. The walls were lined with donated coats, old photos, and framed thank you notes from people whose cars and lives had been rebuilt there. The sound inside wasn't chaos anymore, it was music. Tools clicking, laughter bouncing off metal, and the low rumble of engines returning to life. Jack walked the floor like a conductor, limping slightly but never slowing. Toby ran diagnostics on a training engine, while a group of teenagers learned how to change brake pads under his guidance. On another bench, an older veteran named Marvin showed a young woman how to weld a fender. Emily's small clinic occupied the corner now, a simple setup, a cot, a first aid shelf, and a warm smile for whoever needed both. It wasn't just a garage anymore, it was a heartbeat. That morning, Jack hung a new wooden plaque by the entrance. It read, "The Harper Program, dedicated to those who believed in the fix." Emily watched him tighten the last screw. "Luke would have liked that," Jack nodded. "He believed in getting things right even when they broke wrong." She smiled softly. "Sounds like someone else I know." He chuckled. "You know, you're gonna have to stop making me sentimental in front of the kids." Toby called from across the shop. "Too late, boss. We already saw the tears." Everyone laughed. Jack rolled his eyes. "Back to work, comedian." But his smile didn't fade. Later that day, a small ceremony was held, informal but heartfelt. The mayor, Carl, the local press, and half the town gathered as Jack unveiled a new addition, a training scholarship for veterans and students. Carl spoke briefly. When Jack first came back, we saw a man who'd lost everything. Now we see a man who taught us how to find it again. Emily followed, her voice gentle but strong. He taught us that fixing what's broken isn't a job, it's an act of hope. Then Jack stepped forward. This place started as a way to pay for mistakes, but it turned into something bigger, a way to teach others how to build again. Engines, yes, but also purpose. He paused, glancing toward the group of young trainees in the front row. Every bolt you turn, every engine you bring back to life, that's proof that no one's beyond repair. Not machines, not people. The crowd applauded softly. He didn't need to say more. The room itself, the laughter, the warmth, the smell of oil and coffee said everything for him. Months passed. The workshop grew. Grants came in. Volunteers showed up from neighboring towns. The Harper program became a regional model, training hundreds of mechanics, veterans, and youth who had once been overlooked. And through it all, Jack never took credit. He stayed on the floor, hands dirty, guiding, teaching, laughing. One evening, he and Emily stood outside as the sun fell behind the trees, the orange glow reflecting off the windows. "Do you ever think about leaving?" she asked. He shook his head. "For the first time, I don't need to." She smiled. "That's the answer I was hoping for." They watched as the trainees closed the garage, lights flickering off one by one. The sign above the door gleamed in the dusk. Dwyer Community Workshop. Jack looked at it for a long time, quiet pride in his eyes. "You built something that's gonna last," Emily said softly. He smiled. "We built it." She leaned against the truck, hands in her pockets. "You know, this town's gonna talk about you for a long time." He chuckled. "Let 'em. Maybe next time they'll tell the story right." The camera would pull back, the shop a warm beacon in the blue evening, snow starting to fall again, laughter echoing faintly from inside. Because sometimes marked destinies don't end with glory or noise. They live quietly, in the sound of an engine turning over, a life rebuilt, a town remembering how to hope. 10 years later, the town of Cedar Falls looked different. Not bigger, just more alive. The old roads were smoother now. The diner had been rebuilt, and where a rundown garage once stood, there was a 2-story training center surrounded by trees and laughter. The sign out front was new, but its soul was the same. Dwyer Community Workshop, home of second chances. Inside, engines still hummed, hands still learned, and dreams still started small. A young woman, maybe 22, stood at the front of the class, teaching a group of high schoolers how to rebuild a carburetor. Her name was Katie Harper, Luke's daughter. On the wall behind her hung a framed photo, a man with calm eyes and grease on his hands, smiling shyly beside a much younger Toby. Below it, engraved on a plaque, were the words, "Jack Dwyer, he fixed more than engines." Katie wiped her hands on a rag and smiled at her students. "Okay," she said. "Here's what Jack used to say. You can't fix something you don't respect. So take your time. Listen to the sound. It'll tell you what it needs." One of the boys raised his hand. "Did you know him?" She nodded softly. "Yeah, he taught my dad before he passed. And when I thought my life was going nowhere, he taught me too, even after he was gone." They worked in silence for a moment, just the gentle rhythm of tools and breathing. Across the room, an older Toby, now in his 30s, confident and calm, was checking the wiring on a training engine. He wore a small silver dog tag around his neck. When class ended, he stepped outside into the cool air. The town stretched out below the hill, golden in the afternoon light. He looked up at the clouds and smiled. "You'd like this, Jack," he murmured. "It's running smooth." That evening, a community dinner filled the workshop. Long tables, warm lights, and families gathered under the smell of barbecue and machine oil. Emily, older now but still sharp-eyed, moved between the tables, laughing with students, hugging old friends. At the head of the room hung the same cardboard sign Jack had written years ago. Community Repair Workshop, for veterans and dreamers. It was yellowed and fragile, but no one had ever replaced it. Some things aren't meant to be perfect. Carl, older too, stood to speak. I used to think destiny was something that happened to us, he said, his voice raspy but strong. But Jack proved it's something we build, piece by piece, person by person. The room fell silent. Everyone there knew what he meant, because they were living proof of it. Later that night, after the crowd had gone, Emily stepped outside. The workshop glowed behind her, quiet now, windows warm against the dark. She walked to the small memorial garden beside the fence, a place the town had built years ago. There were benches, flowers, and a single plaque that read, "In memory of Jack Dwyer, the man who taught us that second chances run on hope." She sat on the bench, pulling her jacket tighter around her. The night air was cold, but peaceful. Above her, the sky was clear. Stars spread wide, the same ones that had watched him rebuild his life years before. She smiled, a tear rolling down her cheek. "I told you it would last," she whispered. And it did. For a moment she closed her eyes and could almost hear him, that dry humor, that steady patience. "Engines talk, Emily. You just have to listen." She laughed softly. "Yeah, Jack, I'm still listening." The wind carried through the trees, gentle, constant, like the hum of an engine running smooth after years of work. The camera would rise slowly, showing the workshop from above, the sign glowing faintly under the stars, the sounds of laughter echoing faintly from inside, the whole town breathing as one. And then the final words fade across the screen. Because some roads don't end, they just lead us back to the places we were always meant to rebuild. Marked Destinies.